left, right, out. March 13th. I'm doing this one a little late. There's a lot of big news. Um, let's talk about the PPI because the PPI came out and I was kind of trying to digest it myself. It was 11.2% year over year. I think it was 1.2 month over month. Just an incredible number. And year over year, I believe that's the largest number on record. Granted, like I say, the way they calculate a lot of this stuff is just, especially on the CPI side of it, is just completely nonsensical. But here's the thing: is like the market reacted super positive to this. Like somehow this is going to be the peak. And then also it was, it didn't blow out expectations as much. Which that sounds, insane in itself. It didn't blow out expectations more than they expected. That's you can't make that up. Excuse me. But think about it this way too. It's like I just lost my train of thought again. But um, what? Oh well, I got two things. We'll just go on to the next one. So with that 11.2% PPI, and then you have the CPI going 8.5%. I didn't catch what that translates into a month over month. Now I remember the other point. But let's go into this other thing. So this whole peak inflation thing that supposedly they're saying, well, this will roll into the other point too. My mind's all over the place, but this whole peak inflation thing they keep selling us on is it doesn't make any sense. And the market's reacting strong to this, and people are saying, well, it's because they believe this is it. Well, there's a couple points there. Well, PPI, that's the producer price, that's the input cost. That has been uh, larger than the CPI number for quite some time now in various regards. So what does that mean? That means either the people that are making things or the things that we consume or export or whatever are not passing on the cost to us yet. So we're or the full brunt of the cost. So what does that tell us now when we see this? That tells us that there's a huge pressure of price increases that are being staved off by the price, by the producers, which goes against what the administration, one of their people, they're blaming greedy corporations, which in fact, if you look at these two numbers and contrast them, you can see that that's not the case. And in fact, the companies would be more than justified in raising the prices even more. And that goes right in the line with it calls for we'll call it inflation or more rises in prices in various goods, and then inflationary prices rising all over the place, and not just capital goods, but then consumer goods. Everything's kind of just trending upward. The other thing is, dang it, I lost it again. I keep losing that train of thought. I was saying the oh yeah. So then they go into the core PPI, right? And they say, well, that's hot too, but it's not that hot. Whatever is like 6 point something. But what is the core PPI? Well, they exclude food, energy, and whatever and I think it's housing. I can't remember something other super important thing. It's like to me that indicator should be the counter core, because you're excluding all the things that are core in everybody's life, food and energy and all that jazz and housing and whatnot. So I don't know how you even really take into account that number is more important than the other number. And to me, food, energy, and all this other stuff that they exclude is the most important price if we're going to look at it. If we're going to look at just specific prices, and then if you're looking at inflation, you should be looking at all prices, an overall trend in prices. And well, I'd break them up into two different categories: capital assets and capital goods, and then consumer goods. Those are two distinct things that inflation tends to, like a flowing river, wherever fills up the first hole first until it goes to the next one. If that makes any sense, a hole further up the river is going to fill first, or whatever. If you get the analogy. So capital goods typically fill the brunt of inflation first. And then the ramifications of that usually go down to consumer goods. But I did want to dispel one other myth. So they keep blaming Putin on a lot of this stuff, and to me, I look at these numbers and I was really thinking about this. I was like, well, okay, well, we got inflation and all this. I'm looking at all these prices. They're generally there's a huge rise in everything, that is based off of monetary phenomena we call inflation. I was like, okay, if Putin really did all this, well, one, the core PPI, because they take food and all that other jazz out, wouldn't be so high that he wouldn't affect that. It was just minimally, because mostly we get energy and food from and fertilizer stuff from Russia, Ukraine, and then what else? Then yeah, like, so why would he be the responsible for all this? Not saying he's a good guy or anything, but seems counterintuitive. Is like they're basically what I'm saying is you can't believe anything that the government says at all. It seems like anymore. And then we go to the market. I go back, wrap it around back to the market. I don't know what the market's thinking. I know what people are thinking in the short term. I think a lot of institutional investors are actually using this upticks or whatever in these algorithmic trading, and they're selling. I believe that's the only thing that makes sense to me. They're using this to get out of certain things, because the market going up like this. Because what does this actually do? One, it's nonsensical to believe this is peak inflation. Even if we got a pullback in inflation, it's still already building on itself. So if let's say you got 1.2% month over month, and we got, like, let's say it even went half to 0.6%, right? Or point whatever 0.06% or something like that. That's still prices increasing. It's not, and wages aren't staying up with that. Prices are still going up, and I believe it's building up to where you're going to have, even maybe even larger percentage wise. But it doesn't matter if they're increasing, they're increasing, and that's not good for the average person. That's your standard of living going down. But for some reason the market's doing this. I also looked at the Fed balance sheet. So last they reported, we're leveled off, barely any kind of incremental increases, which I would say that's also bad for the market. And that's also, you couple that with the federal deficit numbers that have come out, that's bad for that. That's bad for interest rates. Like, who's going to be in the market buying this stuff? And then you look at what the Fed has said. They're going to half point rate hikes coming in May. QT, start rolling the balance sheet off. Right now, I mean, with that number, I know they say peak, it doesn't matter, but this is justifying, like I said, you're going to have a little bit of a push, I think, for that 0.75% rate hike. You're going to get the half point, and once we get bonds pushing, to me, there's a little bit of a rally in the bond market, the 10-year today, and you had an uninversion of the yield curve, but it's still flat to me. If you look at those numbers, it's like, well, who's going to take 0.05% annual rate for double the risk, in time? When you look at the 10-year versus the 5-year versus the 10-year or whatnot, it was very minimal. To me, that's basically flat. I mean, when you're looking at the risk parameters over time. So I know I'm jumping all over the place, but it's just insane. Then, okay, let's go to something else that was more relatable to people. Okay, when you go to the pump or oil prices, we had this big strategic oil reserve release that's still going on, 1 million a day, which seems anti-strategic oil reserve, the mission statement for that whole thing, but they're doing it in trying to stave off oil price. Well, we're back over 100. We're solid in on 103 right now a barrel. Some of that has, so it's doing nothing. If anything, it's just countering, I guess, Putin's closing in some of his wells over there, which is offsetting a million barrels a day, I guess, in global supply. So it just counteracted that. And they're still selling theirs at a discount anyway. I mean, to India, and I guess now India's looking at a coal deal with them too. So that's another side note there. It's all bad news, man. I just can't believe, you look at what the market's doing. It seems like we've been lulled into this weird confusion where people just don't understand this. We've had supply chain crises all over the place. You look at the vehicle market, you look at the capital vehicle markets. I call it capital, is like capital investment for companies. Look at I'm talking about like semi trucks, 18-wheelers and stuff. That market's getting raped. It's going because we have with rising interest rates. You're gonna have, looks like we're hitting right now. One of the things in the data today where they were talking about auto prices, or I believe that was in the CPI data, auto prices leveling off and going down. Well, some of that, we're finally hitting a little bit of a lull in the demand side. We're testing that ceiling, and that doesn't mean that there won't be a rebound. You can't expect everything to just go straight up right now, but you're seeing that parabolic move, and there is a little bit of exhaustion, and maybe in one sector, but that goes, there's still other sectors going on. There's still money supply expansion because banks still have access to the 0%, or 1/4% money, or they're just, it's insane. Everything is just, it's it's coming apart at the seams. And I think there's a lot of people that are still asleep to this. And I don't know what's going to happen here, because at this point, once everybody starts waking up, and once we start getting that once those interest rates pop up even more, when you see that 10-year, it's I thought it would already be, people would be freaking out, and they did a little bit when it was over, just over 2.25, and started going up, and now we're at 2.7. People aren't freaking out. Like I keep saying, is like, look at the way that the capital costs of companies, some of the zombie companies out there. Like, this is not good. It's good in the fact that we need this pain, we need something to happen, but it's not good at the fact that people are still got all this money in there, and they're not reacting to these things, these very tangible prices that are gonna have ramifications on real balance sheets in real people's lives. When you talk about the cost of buying a home, when you talk about the cost for a company to go get that 18-wheeler that they need to ship goods across the country, or just roll over debt. Some of these companies are relying on this stuff to pay payroll. So, I mean, this is going to get bad, and I'm surprised that, usually it's a forward pricing mechanism. And I feel like either they're asleep at the wheel, or they're pricing the rate cuts already before we even have the rate hike. So it's like that thing we've always been looking at the Fed and front running them this whole time, but now we're not even reacting to their claims of their action. Now we're reacting to the next step, and the market's still going up. And wait till if they don't react now, and when the Fed actually does try to move, and we get some QT, then I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. At this point, it seems like everything's irrational. I guess in the long term, the market is rational. You'll get some pricing, some accurate pricing, hopefully, if you don't have any more intervention. But in the short term, it seems completely irrational at this point. All indicators, you would think that you wonder who's putting this risk on. Like I said, I kind of almost think it's pension funds and all these other investors of the sort, that are like these funds that have to be in there because they have to get a certain rate of return, because they got all these people that are collecting these checks that are retired. And I think they're almost forced in the market. Whereas I think institutional investors, like the hedge fund, I think they're using this to get out. The writing's on the wall. The Fed's talking their game. They're already telling you what they're going to do, and it's not good. It's not. With this bubble economy. It's devastating to it. So I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, I want to leave it there. I had some. Oh, wait. There's some things on Ukraine, because I keep seeing this stuff about, which I haven't been talking much about them, and there's a reason, just because it's all propaganda. But they keep throwing this stuff out there to outrage us, to get us outraged, to push us into this, almost to the precipice war. They haven't quite got there where they want that, but they want to be able to sell goods or arms to these people. And I've always said that within the last few weeks, is like, hey, the arms that you send over there are going to get into Russian hands one way or the other, because now whether we like it or not, the Ukrainian army especially is, maybe there's a segment of them that's well trained, but there's a lot of people that aren't. I've seen them personally. But even the ones that are, like, I've heard there's 1,000 Marines out of Mariupol that had surrendered, and now you're just down to the few elements of Azovs that are there. Which, I mean, is it 1,000? Is it 500? Who knows? Some of that's propaganda from the Russian side. But there's a few instances of attacks or civilian casualties, supposedly chemical attacks. But I'd let you know that just err on the side of skepticism. You got to think who benefits from any of this propaganda, or it is propaganda, even if some of it's based on some sort of truth. Who benefits, who doesn't benefit, who has motive, who has means. So when we look at Russia, do they really want to? And this went with Syria, and it turned out to be true. It's like, well, if you're winning the war, which I guess the West has framed it, the Russians aren't winning, but I've told you that they are. This is part of the tactics. They went up there, they split the army, they whittled them down to the point where they isolated them. Now they have what they needed from up north. They come down, they reinforce their main effort, and they're going to wipe the slate clean of those units that are in the southeast there, and take over that region. And then hopefully, I mean, well, not hopefully, but I mean, hopefully that'll be the end of the conflict. But then those separate regions will, by referendum, join Russia, more than likely. But anyway, so who benefits? Does Russia benefit whatsoever by using chemical weapons or purposely killing civilians? Which there's a lot of counter uh, facts to that. Because what does that do? That it gives the impetus for NATO to get involved, or to arm Ukraine even further, or to build up even more forces on the edge of the eastern front of NATO. Or does the Ukrainians, because Ukrainians benefit immensely by having these atrocities occur, because they want people to join the war. They want NATO in there. There's no doubt about it. They've already been caught lying so many times. It's insane. Just blatant, like over the top propaganda lies. Video games, footage from years ago, recast and put it. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff. Not, if your country's on the verge of, complete overrun, I mean, you're going to come up with the stuff too to get, reinforcements to get people in there. So, I mean, I do blame them because it can cost millions of lives, but at the same time, it's like you understand where they're coming from when they're doing this kind of stuff. But we can't believe it. You got to be skeptical. The rocket that supposedly killed or people at the train thing. I mean, I've looked at it too. I've looked at some of the data. Yeah, Russia, and we could say Russia doesn't use that anymore. That they have more up to date missile systems, but they had it, right. They're the ones who manufactured it, and the Ukrainians are still currently using those. So both of them have it more than likely. We know the Ukrainians have it. We know the Russians used to manufacture it. So presumably we can assume that the Russians have those still. Just maybe they don't use them and they have a more up to date missile system, but they could still have them. It seems like they could, just in case. But we know the Ukrainians have them. So okay, well, if they both have them and this atrocity occurred, well, then there's some people circulating that maybe the serial numbers match up with something. I haven't seen that. I don't know for sure. That would be kind of a smoking gun. But here's why I look at it too. So okay, well then who had? So they both have the means, right? So who has the motive to kill civilians? Well, the Russians don't, because then that gives them a bad reputation on the, even more of a, it's an atrocity. They could presumably draw people into the war, the conflict. I mean, over time, over the 20th century, let's put that, smaller things have led to greater wars. So why would you don't want to do that? They want the least amount of countries involved in this. Whereas the Ukrainians have the opposite. They have the motive, because atrocities tend to bring more sympathy from the world stage, and hence more money, more aid, weapons, money, resource, just resource in general, and possibly intervention from other countries that are superior than them. So you have to look at that. So I'm not saying it's one way or the other, but I'm saying I tend to lean on that this could have been a rogue Ukrainian, especially down there in the southeast where they're surrounded, and there's really nothing else for them to lose. I mean, you might as well just fake gas attacks, fake this stuff, and see if you can get people riled up. And because your back's against the wall, and what do? When a dog, corner a wounded dog or put a wounded dog in a corner, or corner him, they start getting pretty vicious. And so you start pulling out all the stops. But anyway, I want to leave you there. I'll talk to you later. Peace.